The walkway above the dance floor collapses. Steel rods rip loose from the ceiling and the entire bridge drops toward the crowd below. The falling structure slams into the walkway beneath it, and both suspended platforms crash into the center of the atrium. By the end of the night, 114 people were dead. Concrete panels explode across the dance floor. Steel railings tear away from the edges of the bridges. The music stops in the middle of a song as the sound of tearing metal fills the entire lobby. For a moment, nobody understands what has happened. The atrium had been full of music and movement only seconds earlier. Now, two massive walkways lie stacked across the center of the floor. Dust spreads through the air. People begin shouting. Some run toward the exits. Others rush toward the wreckage. Voices are already calling from inside the debris. Someone is yelling that people are trapped underneath. Several of us move toward the collapsed bridges at the same time. 30 seconds earlier, the lobby had been full of dancing. It was Friday night at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Kansas City. The weekly tea dance had filled the atrium again, just like it did most weeks. Couples moved across the dance floor while people gathered along the edges of the lobby, watching. The room itself was enormous. The atrium rose several stories above the floor, open all the way to the glass ceiling far above us. Hotel corridors lined the upper levels, their railings looking down into the space below. 3 pedestrian bridges crossed the atrium from one side of the building to the other. One walkway crossed the space on the second floor. Another crossed farther back on the third floor. The highest bridge crossed the atrium on the fourth floor. The bridges looked like suspended streets hanging in the air. The fourth floor bridge hung directly above the second floor bridge, one stacked over the other, while the third floor bridge sat farther back in the atrium and did not line up with the other two. People leaned along the railings of the bridges, watching the dancers below. Some stood shoulder to shoulder along the fourth floor walkway, looking down at the crowd. Others crossed the bridges slowly, pausing along the rails. The band was playing near the bar. Music echoed off the walls of the tall space. Glasses clinked. People laughed and talked across the floor. The hotel had opened only about a year earlier, and the Friday night dances had quickly become one of the busiest nights of the week. Hundreds of people had come to the hotel that evening. The room felt full. At one point, I remember glancing upward at the walkways. They moved slightly as people walked across them. The motion seemed normal for suspended bridges. Nothing about the scene suggested that anything was wrong. Then a sharp metallic sound echoed through the atrium. It was a loud snapping sound, like a heavy cable suddenly breaking. The sound came from somewhere above the fourth floor walkway. Several people around me looked up. A few on the dance floor paused, trying to figure out where the noise had come from. Before anyone could react, the bridge dropped. The entire fourth floor walkway fell straight down. People standing on it disappeared with the falling structure. Directly beneath it hung the second floor walkway. The upper bridge crashed into it. The lower structure tore free from its supports. Both bridges collapsed together. The combined weight of the two structures crashed into the dance floor. The impact felt like an explosion. People were knocked off their feet. Concrete slabs shattered when they struck the ground. Steel beams twisted apart. The suspension rods that had been holding the bridges now hung bent and torn from the ceiling above. Dust filled the entire atrium. Where dancers had been standing seconds earlier, 2 enormous platforms now lay piled across the center of the lobby. Some people had been thrown clear of the collapse. Others were trapped beneath the wreckage. Several of us climbed onto the fallen bridges, trying to reach the people pinned underneath. Voices were coming from inside the collapsed walkways. Some victims were trapped between steel beams. Others were buried beneath broken slabs of concrete. A man near me shouted that people were alive under the debris. Someone yelled for an ambulance. Another person ran toward the hotel desk to call emergency services. Within minutes, sirens began arriving outside the building. Police officers rushed into the lobby. Firefighters followed close behind them. When they saw the collapsed bridges, they slowed for a moment, taking in the scene. Two massive walkways lay stacked across the dance floor. Above them, the third-floor bridge still hung in place. It had been positioned farther back in the atrium and had not been directly beneath the collapse. People standing on that bridge were staring down at the wreckage below. Firefighters began climbing onto the debris. Some rescuers crawled into narrow openings beneath the beams where voices could still be heard. Others brought hydraulic jacks and cutting tools into the lobby. The debris was extremely heavy. Each steel beam weighed hundreds of pounds. The walkways themselves weighed many tons. If the structure shifted suddenly, it could crush the people trapped underneath. Rescuers placed wooden supports beneath sections of the wreckage before lifting anything. Paramedics carried the injured outside through the hotel entrance. Some people walked out with assistance. Others were taken away on stretchers. Many victims remained trapped beneath the collapsed bridges. As darkness fell, floodlights were brought into the atrium. The rescue effort continued through the night. Firefighters cut through steel beams and lifted pieces of concrete one section at a time. Rescuers crawled into tight spaces, searching for anyone still alive. For hours, voices could still be heard under the debris. Later, we would learn what had caused the bridges to fall. At the time, none of us understood what had failed above our heads. The walkways had been suspended by long steel rods connected to the ceiling. Originally, the design used a single rod running from the ceiling through both the fourth-floor and second-floor bridges. During construction, that design had been changed. Instead of one continuous rod, the fourth-floor bridge had been connected directly into the second-floor walkway below it. That meant the lower bridge was carrying the weight of the upper one. When spectators filled the fourth-floor walkway during the dance, that weight pressed down on the connection points of the second-floor bridge. Those connections could not support the load. The steel supports pulled apart. The fourth-floor walkway dropped. When it fell, it struck the second-floor walkway beneath it. Both bridges collapsed together into the crowded atrium. By the time the rescue effort ended, 114 people had died. More than 200 others were injured. The Hyatt Regency building itself remained standing, but the suspended walkways that once crossed the atrium were removed. For everyone who had been in that lobby that evening, the moment lasted only seconds. Music played. People danced. Spectators leaned along the railings above. Then the metal connections failed, and the walkways fell into the crowd.